Okay, so this is going to be a little um, chat about some images I've been editing. I've been experimenting with Darktable as a possible, say this cautiously, replacement for Capture One, as to whether we can achieve the same results, whether the workflow is as efficient, and also because I, having used Darktable a little bit, think that it's a good program. It's worthy of paying attention to. Um, I've been quite impressed so far with what I can achieve. So I thought I would have a little chat. I've just finished editing this whole image set in Capture One, so I'm very familiar with each and every image, what I was trying to achieve with them. Uh, what that means is that my eye is tuned in to what I want. So I thought it's a good time to jump into Darktable and see if I can match those results. Um, so yeah, apologies for the noise in the background at the time. Um, so yeah, as I said, I'm very tuned into this particular image set, so it's a good time to um, play with Darktable and see if I'm happy with the results. So far, I am quite pleased. There are some UI things that bug me, so I'm actually going to talk about them because, um, yeah, it feels like some important questions for the developers. Um, I fully appreciate what, well, I don't fully appreciate, but I do appreciate how much work they put in, and that these aren't simple things to just solve like that. Um, but there are things that have sort of bugged me, um, trying to move between Capture One and Darktable. I'm using Darktable for those who care. I'm in Fedora 33, um, running a like a GNOME tweaks UI thing that makes everything look a little bit nicer. So I can't remember the name of it, but suffice to say, that's what I'm doing. Um, okay, so let's hop over to Darktable. It's smaller. Yeah. Apologies, my son is making a lot of noise in the background. Okay, so this is the image we're trying to achieve. So I was particularly concerned with making her hair nice and shiny, um, giving her a nice contrast, bringing out the makeup. Um, so this was a maternity shoot that I did recently, and yeah, um, one thing that was unavoidable was that I was working on location, so I actually I wasn't aware that they wanted to do a sort of studio style when I arrived on the job, so I kind of had to roll with it, and I used their wall. You can see that there's a bit of texture in the wall, but I don't think it's terrible. Okay, so this is where we start. This is upon import. Um, as always, raw files look really bad when you bring them in because they're not they're not baked. They actually look worse than the JPEG that came straight out of camera because obviously they require some work to get to that JPEG. So this is one of the places where Capture One kind of has the upper hand, is that its default when the image comes in looks a little bit better, but it's pretty close. I mean, it's not, and to be honest, the raw file when it comes in is largely irrelevant. So, place that I always start is fixing exposure. Um, Something to point out is you'll see this little drop down that it's important to pay attention. Is the output process scene referred? I tend to prefer scene referred for my initial edits because you know that things are going to work better. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the exposure. I can't remember, this does feel a little underexposed. I can't remember whether that was intentional or whether it was, I was moving quite fast, so it might have been that I wasn't paying particular attention to exposure at that point. Point is, I tend to shoot portraits relatively underexposed because I'm shooting with a D800 and my shadows look pretty good. And I find that blowing things out is usually harder to recover than lifting up your shadows. So that's just been my experience. Okay, so I always do a crop and rotate. So there is actually a bit of a crop here. It's, yeah, you can see there's like rubbish around there. I tend to shoot a little bit wide with this sort of thing. My white balance, I felt the white balance, sorry, the original white balance when it came in was a bit warm. So it's probably about there, 5,100, 5,200. So then the tint feels a little bit off. So I'm just gonna swing the tint. There we go. Right. That's about right. So I apologize for having to watch me tint my image. That's largely okay. So that I'm pretty happy with. Now what I'm going to do is play with Filmic. So Filmic RGB is the kind of preferred way to work with scene referred with contrast management. So what I want to do is I want to pull the contrast a little bit, and I want to just one of the things to watch out for is here it's very dark. It like completely, if you check the overexposed, underexposed, she's very underexposed. So I want to, sorry, this is not underexposed. This is, oh, it's clipping warning. Yeah, it's what I wanted. Okay, so if you look at the environment, someone commented on a reason on my previous video, like how do you know if you're getting these white relative and black relative right? And to be honest, I don't know what the science is. I just eyeball it. My monitor is calibrated, so I trust it. That's all you can really do is trust your monitor. I've printed enough images from this monitor and this particular color profile to be able to be pretty convinced that it's fairly accurate. The next thing that I do is if you hit this local contrast, see how it bumps things up a little bit. You do need to be careful with it. It can, yeah, it goes bad quick. So, but I find just turning it on does provide a little pump, a little bit of punchiness. Then the next thing is I do so I want to do an exposure adjustment. I want to create like a slight vignette. So I'm going to go and make a new instance. Then I'm going to go and draw. I'm going to draw myself a mask, and then I'm going to drop the exposure on that mask, and I'm going to invert it. Now I always go a little heavy on my vignettes to kind of see their position. And then I will, so one thing I found, this mask blur needs to be turned up because otherwise things get funky. I'm going to feather it hectically. I pretty much go to the maximum threshold. And it is possible to go beyond, but I'm not doing that at this point. Now, vignettes are a little bit of a contentious issue. Some people hate them. Personally, I think that if they feel like they fit, then I don't think they're a problem. But some people think they're awful, tacky. I don't know. I think some images weren't. a slight vignette. This one especially has like a natural vignette towards the bottom, so that's why I felt like it's appropriate. Okay, these top little corners are sort of bugging me, so I'm going to reduce that a little bit. So let's see. I want to. Okay. All right. So then from there, I'm going to go over to the color toning. Actually, the one thing that I want to do that I often find is helpful is contrast equalizer. Then I pull up our curve just to sharpen things up a little bit. You can see it's a little bit harsh, so I'm going to pull it back. Okay, there we go. All right, and then I'm going to go and do a color balance. I prefer this hue saturation lightness because it just makes sense to me. I like to introduce a little bit of blue into my shadows. See, this gets really hectic really quick. But if I find that if we pull back a little bit on the offset, suddenly it makes sense. What that does is just that introduction of blue kind of makes the makeup pop a little bit. Feels a little underexposed from that point, so I'm going to push it up a little bit. See, I don't want to lose that in the nose. Okay, and I think that's about that. I think my previous image was a bit warmer. I look at it, yeah. So that kind of comes down to a little bit of a white balance adjustment. There we go. Quite like that. So just to show you where we were, I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to do a snapshot. And I'm going to reset there. This is a useful trick. Copy, select and crop. I'm just pasting just the crop. Sometimes the paste doesn't take. I don't know if that's my keyboard or if that's. So this is where we were. This is where we were, and this is where we are now. So I think that edit's quite nice. Okay, so I had a couple of other images, but I think this video is long enough. Maybe I'll make another one. Just something that does bug me that I've been meaning to talk about is this. When I change images, let's turn that off. When I change images, there's this moment of gray. So there's this gray moment, which I really don't like. If you go to Darktable, you don't have that problem. My edit's a bit inconsistent. So we don't have this problem here. Pretty much just changes because culling mode, this culling mode inside the Darktable is designed for this. But in the darkroom, if I switch images, I have to wait and it flashes. It would be better in terms of my experience if it stayed on the screen until it's loaded the new image and then just changed over. Because this loading working business, not cool. Like, yeah, hurts my eyes. Sometimes I like to work like full screen and then I want to be able to switch images and do an A/B toggle, but I can't because my eyes get messed up by this gray. I want to see exactly what my changes are. So that's something that's been bugging me. But anyway, so that's the story. I think I'll do the other images at a later point because this video is long enough. Okay, but yeah, so those are the things. Those are my edits. You like, for what it's worth, I'm not an expert in this stuff. I'm actually a Darktable noob, but the things that I find to be super important was contrast equalizer, a little bit of local contrast. Be careful. Filmic always is the base for setting things. I like to do a little bit of not color calibration, a little bit of a color balance. I always keep it on this hue, saturation, lightness, just to introduce a bit of blue into my shadows. Sometimes I do, that's the other thing. Sometimes I introduce a little bit of warmth into my midtones. But yeah, so these are the kind of things that I do. I'm not doing a great deal. I am very much of the opinion that less is more. I don't like to do like hardcore selective tone-based modifications. To me, like a color grade should work such that I can then copy this color grade and apply it to the rest of the images in this particular set. So that's kind of how I think about things. Yeah, because if I had to do this on every single image, obviously it would take me forever. Now what I can do is I can go boom, and I can copy my color balance between my different images, and then I can just set my exposure. Yeah, so that's the story. Hopefully this was helpful to someone out there. Yeah, cool. Thanks to the devs. I think you guys are doing a great job. I'm super excited about Darktable at the moment. Really impressed with the software. Can't wait to see how it develops. Cheers.